The next article is really a shout out to Ed Marks, who's been a guest on the show. And he wrote an article on LinkedIn called Disintermediation of Hospitals Begin. He starts off with, in the classic and time-tested predictable formula, retail and payers are aggressively disrupting at the core level of healthcare today. Primary care is the battlefield. And we've talked about that on the show. That is absolutely true. Why is primary care the battlefield? It's because that's where the customer relationship lies for healthcare. And all these players are trying to get in between, right? They're actually take over primary care, and then they've established that they're the point of relationship. And if they're the point of relationship, then they can direct care in the best way for the consumer, but also in the best way for them, and not necessarily for the best way for the healthcare provider. He goes on to say the primary care foundation is quickly shifting from the hospital to payer, retail, and virtual. Without the primary care foundation to direct patients and secure contracts, unprepared hospitals will wobble. New entrants will work their way up the value chain from this basis. Surviving hospitals will become centers of excellence and compete nationally for patients at the direction of retail and payers. Payers and retail direct care, role reversal in one generation. Initially stealth-like experimenting with their own large employer base, the invasion has begun to open. That whole paragraph could essentially become from that story right before it, right? That is Walmart. That is the Walmart story. That's what they're doing. And they're not the only ones, as we know. Remaining hospitals will specialize in high acuity care. Hospital chains will centralize everything from operations to clinical care via digital command centers. There will be no urgent care. There will be limited primary care. And he goes on, the next section is titled, Digital is no longer differentiation. It is survival. So I'm going to point you to the story. You're going to want to check it out. Ed goes into detail and offers some quick hits on what can be done here. It is really thought-provoking piece, and I believe it's spot on. You know, so what's my so what? If I were in a system that isn't really talking about digital or asset light, reducing debt and competing for the customer mind share, I would be concerned. And I'm going to try to be pragmatic here because I've seen this exercise really work. There's a question that we use sometimes to get people to start thinking in a disruptive way. And throw this question out the next time you're having a conversation with execs. And the question is, put them in the other role. So they now work for your health system. Put them in the other role and say, if you were going to disrupt our health system, what would you do? It's a great question. I've seen it used several times. The team gets all ramped up. They really enjoy the process of being the underdog, and they come up with about 6 ways to disrupt the health system. And then when they get done and you grab those 6 things, you might want to remind them that every one of those ideas that they just came up with are probably already in motion and well funded by disruptors. And it might be time for your organization to start thinking like a disruptor. And I found that question to be a really good one, really thought-provoking. Sometimes people do it and they sit back and they go, oh gosh, it's not that hard, as hard as I think it is. Our moat is not as big as I think it is before people get to our, the castle wall, if you will. All right.